Good evening to you. Good evening, panel. Will common sense prevail when Conservative MPs, party members and dodgy donors decide to dump the PM for their own personal and political interests?
Got to come to you, Esther.
Oh, you certainly have, because that is my mantle, isn't it? I've been dubbed that, and happy to wear that mantle of common sense. Well, nobody will be getting rid of the Prime Minister. That wouldn't be common sense. And having spoken to everybody, pretty much all of our Conservative MPs, particularly as we had 10 votes last night, I managed to get around everybody. And apart from a couple of disgruntled people, actually, they all support Rishi Sunak. And I can quite honestly say if there were a vote of confidence in him, he'd absolutely win by a country mile. So that is not going to happen. But getting back to common sense is key. And actually it's something that the Prime Minister has very much brought in, and something we absolutely need after lockdown. And things like not racing to net zero, as other parties want to do, that would push people into poverty. It is not working. The infrastructure isn't there. We need to do that at the right pace. And Rishi Sunak's the only leader that stood up for that, what the people want. So that's common sense. Also stopping HS2, something that had ballooned absolutely out of budget, and say, do you know what, we're going to spend that money in those local areas on the local infrastructure. And then finally, got to get the economy back on track, which is bringing inflation down. Once you've got inflation down, which we're seeing now wages going up, we're seeing confidence, consumer and business confidence going up, and then tax rates are high, I know that, but at least he started bringing them down, bringing that national insurance, bringing that. So that's common sense.
The budget was a wasted opportunity there, wasn't it? Because politically it's done no good to the Conservative Party at all. And I mean, given that we are only a matter of months away from an election, that was kind of the last opportunity. Surely it would have been common sense to have made the most of that opportunity.
Well, I don't believe it was the last opportunity, if I'm being honest. And I would have liked to have seen, I'll be brutally honest, I am a low tax, low state Conservative. I would have liked to have seen more. However, what is common sense? You've got to work within the parameters you've got there. You've got to do it steady as she goes. And by the way, if anybody is fiscally competent, it is Rishi. That is his background. Everybody else doesn't have that background. And he said, and he followed the late, great Nigel Lawson, get inflation down and only then can you bring tax down. So yes, it was as steady as you go. I would have liked to have seen, more tax cuts, but I do believe they're on the way. And,
so
inflation figures about to...
you think there will be another budget before the election?
Some fiscal statement, I'm hoping, yes. And I think we'll see, as we get the economy back on track, those tax rates coming even further down. But that's the most thing, having a robust economy. And like I said, we've just had, 32 billion of foreign investment coming into the country because they believe in our country, whether that's Nissan, whether that's Google, so they believe in it. And look at the rest of Europe. We're now doing better, aren't we, than whether it's Japan, whether it's Germany. We've just overtaken France in manufacturing. So let's not talk our country down. It's been very difficult with lockdown, been very difficult with the Russian-Ukraine war. But, I think we're going to come out of this.
Alison.
I mean, whether Rishi Sunak goes before or after the election, he's on his way out. That seems perfectly evident. Conservative MPs, party members, didn't want him in the first place.
Well, the MPs did. They voted for him.
The party membership didn't want him, so they ended up with a Prime Minister that the party membership didn't want. Whether he goes before or after the election that he's almost inevitably going to lose now remains to be seen. Whether he has that sooner or later, that's very much what's going to happen here. He is going to lose this election. And Tory MPs can keep him or not keep him up until that point. So the result is pretty much inevitable at this stage. But he is the fifth Prime Minister since 2015. It was a party in chaos. They have trashed the economy and there is very little he can do to help that at all.
I hate to break it to you, but he's actually the sixth.
He's sixth? Who have I forgotten?
You've David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and maybe my maths are out.
I was having a panic there. I counted. There's been more chancellors.
He's so good. He's felt like two. Is that what you're saying?
There's been more chancellors.
You might say that. I couldn't.
More chancellors than prime ministers in any event. But it is a chaotic situation. There is nothing he can say here that's going to stave off that inevitable loss. And I do think that the budget was a missed opportunity. People weren't calling for more tax cuts. They're calling for more support for absolutely crumbling public services, which has happened as a result of this mismanagement over the past decade. It has happened because of austerity. And people are really seeing that now.
Is there a potential alternative Conservative leader that would cause the SNP to think, well, I hope they do stick with Rishi Sunak rather than have, it's probably a her rather than a him. I mean, I had an email from quite a left-wing Labour MP the other day, quite well-known one, who said, by the way, Penny Mordaunt's the one that we fear. Is that the same in the SNP? You can be honest.
I mean, I don't fear any of them, really. They're selling the same stuff, and it's not something that Scotland has wanted to buy for quite some time.
OK. Kate?
Well, I don't think there will be a change of leader. I think the party, Conservative Party, which I'm not a member of, would be mad to go for another leader at this stage. It's far, far too late. And also, I think it would actually make the country lose even more respect for the whole kind of institution.
They would become a laughing stock if they did it, wouldn't they?
I just think there would be absolutely no credibility for them. So there's nothing to gain from changing the Prime Minister. The only thing that can change is if in the next few months Labour and Sir Keir Starmer, make a few mistakes, start actually giving detail of what they're actually going to do. And that could certainly help to bring the majority down. I mean, clearly at the moment, it's pretty obvious there's going to be a change of government. The Tories will not want to lose they won't want to be destroyed. Although some people would say that that's the only way you'll actually then get what would be called a proper Conservative Party back. If it's properly destroyed to start with, it won't be. But I think I genuinely don't think the majorities that people keep talking about will be like that, because there is not enthusiasm out there like there was. And I remember back when Tony Blair got elected, people were literally,
you were one of the Blair babes, weren't you?
Yeah, well, no, I was in before I came in. But yes, no, I was the only one didn't go in the photograph. Myself and Claire Short.
You not?
No.
Why not?
Just didn't. We didn't like this idea that they're sort of pushing all these sort of women's stuff. Anyway,
good for you.
But genuinely, I think when it gets nearer to the election, and of course there's all these unknowns. Will George Galloway put up lots of Muslim candidates in Labour areas? Will Reform keep doing as well as they seem to be doing? I went down and helped Ben Habib in I've nearly forgotten where it was. Wellingborough. And I was genuinely interested in just how towards the end of that campaign... Are you
supporting Reform UK now?
I'm not a member of any political party, and having been an MP for one
that's a pretty good sign that you're a supporter.
No, I supported Ben Habib because I think he's brilliant. Right. I really like him. And towards the end of that campaign, the recognition for Reform was much greater, and if it hadn't been for postal votes, he would have got a lot more towards the end. So I think there's still an awful lot to play for, a lot of unknowns, and the Conservatives would be mad to now change the leader, no matter what you think of him.
OK, Mathew Hulbert.
Well, I mean, I want to say first off that I think if you have to appoint a particular minister with the title of for common sense, I don't quite know what that says about the rest of the administration.
It was dubbed by the media, so I wasn't. That's wrong.
But you accept it, right?
I totally do, because I think it's really important. It is about logic. It is about rationale, understanding. It is about sort of the common knowledge. So yes, I will take it on board.
It's what most people want. They want some common sense in whoever's in power.
Common sense, Mathew? I mean, even the Liberal Democrats sometimes.
We very often speak common sense, and Ed Davey was talking a lot of it at the weekend. Go back and watch the speech, folks. I think we need a general election, not a Tory leadership election, and I think that is what the country are crying out for. I mean, we've got people who are having to choose between heating and eating. We've got a crisis in the NHS, which, as some people know, has affected my own family. We've got a crisis in social care. I mean, the country is absolutely desperate for a general election. So I just wish the Tories would stop, the navel-gazing, and that Rishi would go to the palace and call that election.
But it's, as you well know, constitutionally, he can decide when to have the election up to January 2025. It's most likely, I think, to be in the autumn, so that's not going to happen. But why do you think, and I assume you do think this, that why hasn't he connected with the electorate in the way that obviously most Conservatives hoped that he would when he became Prime Minister?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember back to his speech outside the steps of Downing Street after he'd just been appointed Prime Minister. And actually, as much as I, of course, would want to see an alternative to the Tories in government, I actually thought that it was a good speech and that if he lived by what he said, if he governed in that way, with responsibility and with ethics and with integrity, well, OK, fair enough, we'll see how he gets on. But you can't say, that the government has done that. I mean, I listen to your show regularly, Iain, you'll be pleased to know, and you've reported to your listeners all the crises and all the controversies and all the rest of it, the Lee Andersons and all the rest, that we've seen over the past few weeks and months. And I think the Tories think, stop taking us for fools, call the election.
Esther, why do you think Rishi Sunak hasn't connected in the way that I suspect you hoped he would when he became Prime Minister? Is he seen as an administrator rather than a politician, that he doesn't get the politics of it?
I think, and I've been on a journey to get to know him as well, so I wouldn't have been part of his sort of circle of friends, but I think he took over at a really, really difficult time. We've all got to say whether that was immigration, whether that was coming out of lockdown, whether that was what was going on with Ukraine and Russia.
Liz Truss was a difficult time.
Yeah. And after Liz Truss, absolutely. And the guy is hugely studious, hugely diligent, and wanted to make sure he was on top of the detail. So I think he was doing a lot of the bookwork at the beginning to make sure, and everybody would say, irrespective of every department, who was the guy on top of the detail. It didn't matter if it was him in the Home Office knowing what was going on in Rwanda, it didn't matter if it was him in Treasury. So I think, and this is what I think he's got to do now, is come out and let us know the person. So
John Major.
I've got to know him a lot more. And I mean, crikey, he is the guy who could actually come out and say what a woman is. Keir Starmer can't. He knows what he is. He's
we're really going to go there, are we?
Our Lib Dem doesn't know what he's talking about either.
We're really going to start attacking one of the most vulnerable minorities in the country.
For goodness sake, I think what
Matthew,
she says is very sensible.
No,
she hasn't.
You know what that means.
No.
We're not going to get diverted into a row over trans issues, unless we have a question about it.
Biological sex, male and female. This is just life. That's what it is. And he is the only person who could stand up for that, and good for him. And I think he's got to come out now, and we've got to see him as a person, his family values, which we know, and, what he cares for his two young girls and how he believes in extending opportunities to all, like he did himself. And I think we've got to see that. But I think we just got him at a time where he was just deep into the detail. And I think you're slowly seeing that come out now. And I want him to show the rest of the country, like I've got to know him. I want him to show his personality, and hopefully he'll get those opportunities.